Today on BRStv Investigates, can you trust these test kits or even yourself to accurately test your tank water? Hi, I'm Randy with this Friday's BRStv Investigates, where we put popular reefing gear, theories, and methods to the test by experimenting on our own tanks so you don't have to experiment on yours. And in today's experiment, we put 6 test kit brands in the hands of 5 reefers with different experience levels in hopes to answer the question of which is more important, saltwater test kit accuracy or testing consistency. Accuracy meaning that the end result and reading is right, or consistency meaning that you can expect consistent and repeatable results with each test. I'm willing to bet that at the end of this one of these kits will be your clear favorite. Okay, so who doesn't want super accurate lab-grade quality test results for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium from their hobby-grade saltwater test kits, especially if we can couple that with a reasonable cost that doesn't end up being more than the entire reef tank setup on its own? Well, you can definitely add me to that list, but for obvious reasons, that combination just really isn't feasible in most cases. And because of that, we need to refine the pool of test kit options out there down to just a small handful that we can trust to be accurate, as well as trust to be conducted consistently. But let's face it, when it comes to making any changes to water parameters and chemistry, I'd like to have some amount of faith that my test kit is not steering me in the wrong direction. So today we'll try to help clear away some fog around saltwater test kit accuracy and consistency by handing 5 different reefers with different hobby experience our 6 most popular test kit brands for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, and have them conduct each one using the same saltwater sample from the BRS 160 for a total of almost 80 different test results. Oh, and don't forget that we also have the Neptune Trident installed on the BRS 160 as well, so of course we'll be adding the testing data from it into the mix. In the end, we'll use the data to help determine which test kit had the most accuracy compared to an overall baseline average, as well as which of those test kits were the most consistent by looking at the differences between the highest reading and the lowest reading. Here's how we plan to get that done. In order to determine a baseline for accuracy, we'll combine everyone's readings from Red Sea, Salifert, Hanna checkers, Aquaforest, Nyos, Lamotte, and the results from the Neptune Trident into an overall average minus the highest and lowest 10% of readings to remove any extreme outliers for each calcium, alkalinity, magnesium water parameter. We'll compare each test kit brand's accuracy based on how close our combined results came to hitting that baseline average, and then break down the average of all 5 reefers' individual results to determine how consistent each test was on its own. Our 5 reefers consist of Aaron and Josh, who conduct all of the parameter testing for every BRStv lab experiment tank, as well as the BRS 160, 750 XXL, and the ULM tanks. These 2 represent those types of reefers who go the extra mile to ensure that each test is done as controlled and consistently as possible by using tools such as gloves, metered pipettes, magnetic stirrers, and a thorough sense of detail when it comes to cleaning, rinsing, and filling each sample vial carefully. Next up is Ryan and I, who represent your average reefer that will likely utilize the included test kit components, perhaps perform the test a little more loosely, but still conduct each test with the same consistency and procedure time and time again. Finally, we have Dave, who more closely represents a hobbyist who has some degree of understanding of how the test kits work and how to perform them, but may still be learning how to properly read the endpoints of the test and perform them consistently to achieve the accurate result, so we can expect some outlier results here. So with that, let's get into it. First up are the calcium test kit results, where we find a baseline average of 512 parts per million from 24 test results, and right off the bat we see that Aquaforest comes in the closest within 2 parts per million with an average accuracy of 510. The next closest in accuracy was the Nyos calcium test at 520 parts per million for a difference of 8 ppm total, followed by the Neptune Trident's test, which was taken right around the exact same time that the large water sample was pulled from the 160, with a calcium reading of 498 or 14 parts per million away from the baseline average. The largest accuracy deviation from all the tests ended up being the Lamotte calcium hardness test, with a 45 parts per million difference from the baseline average, which was likely due to the difficulty that all 5 of us had in reading the color change endpoint from red to purple to blue, and probably one of the leading reasons we discontinued the kit, where even in the instructions it notes to disregard any color change back to purple after 5 seconds, giving you only a fraction of time to determine when the test is complete. Moving on to our consistency comparison and how far apart each of the 5 reefers test results were from each other, we see that the Red Sea calcium test kit yielded the closest results across the board, with only a 10 part per million difference between the highest test at 495 and the lowest at 485, which is absolutely within a reasonable amount of variance for hobby grade test kits, and within almost 250 parts per million more consistent than the Lamotte calcium hardness test, which had a lowest reading of 464 and a high end of 722.4, and again, likely due to the end point reading difficulty. Aaron's results not present because after 3 tries he still couldn't get an end result. In between those two extremes of our consistency test was Aquaforest with a 50 part per million difference between the 4 results at 500 and 1 result at 550. Salifert came in with a low test result of 520 and a high of 580 for a total of 60 part per million difference. Nyos had a difference of 85 parts per million with 475 for the low and 560 for the high, while the Hanna calcium checker showed a consistency difference of 101 parts per million between the lowest reading at 422 and the highest at 523. This was likely due to some difficulty in the testing procedure, where we all agreed that the dilution step of using a 100-to-1 ratio of reagent DI water to sample water added the most difficulty to achieving a consistent result. All right, let's take a look at the alkalinity test kit results for accuracy next, with the test kits that we had available at the time, starting with a 20 test result baseline average of 7.81 DKH, again with the top and bottom 10% of readings removed to control outliers. Interestingly enough, Aquaforest again comes the closest in regards to accuracy, with a deviation of only 0.04 of a DKH point at 7.85, followed closely by the Neptune Trident at 7.9 for a difference of 0.09 DKH. The Lamotte Total Alkalinity Test Kit has the largest difference of the group at just about a half a DKH under the baseline average at 7.39, while on the flip side, the Hanna Alkalinity Checker looks to be over the average by 0.35 DKH, coming in at 8.16. The results for alkalinity testing consistency tell a different tale, where we see that the Hanna checker performs astonishingly well with only 0.3 of a DKH difference between the lowest test at 8.0 and the highest test at 8.3, and it's truly a testament to what can be achieved when you take the human eye out of the equation to help reduce the margin of error when reading the testing endpoint. Up next was the Red Sea Alkalinity Pro Test Kit at a 7 and 8 DKH low and high reading respectively for a difference of just 1 DKH total, and although the Lamotte test had the largest accuracy difference, it actually performed better in consistency at just a 1.12 DKH difference between 6.72 and 7.84 for its low and high result. Salifert's testing results yielded a low result of 7.15 DKH and a high of 8.9 for a difference of 1.75, and surprisingly the top performer for accuracy with Aquaforest ended up being the furthest apart for consistency of almost 2 DKH, coming in with a 1.85 total difference between 7.15 and 9.0. Wrapping up the accuracy and consistency experiment today are the test kits for magnesium, which didn't include results from Hanna or Lamotte due to them not having one available for saltwater at the time. For the baseline average of the magnesium kits we did have available, we calculated an average of 1389 parts per million from 18 test results, with the top and bottom 10% results being removed. For a third time in the accuracy category, we find that Aquaforest performed the closest to that baseline average with an average reading of 1384 and a total difference of just 5 parts per million, while Salifert was close to the same at 1395 and only a difference of 6 parts per million. Red Sea's Magnesium Pro wasn't too far away with a 15 ppm difference at 1404, while the Nyos at 1425 was only 36 parts per million away from the baseline average, and still what I would consider an acceptable accuracy range from a standpoint of the amount of effort reefers would actually put into controlling magnesium down to less than plus or minus 50 parts per million. The largest difference in accuracy category was the Trident at 1308 parts per million, or 81 ppm difference between the baseline. However, I would be confident that if we were able to manually test just for magnesium multiples of times, we'd likely see this closer to how the other test kits performed. Finally, for magnesium test kit consistency, we see that Aquaforest had the tightest group of results, with the lowest reading at 1350 and the highest at 1440 for a difference of 90 parts per million. Salifert performed about the same with a 105 part per million difference between 1335 and 1440, while Nyos had a range of 180 part per million difference from 1320 to 1500. Red Sea's consistency was the furthest apart with a low reading of 1340 and an outlier higher reading at 1600 for a total range difference of 260 parts per million. I'd venture to guess here that because of the experience difference in reading endpoint color changes, we see such a dramatic difference in consistency where if the 1600 higher result were removed, the consistency drops significantly down to just 60 parts per million between the high and the low results. However, this test was one of the more difficult tests to perform for most of us due to the various wait times and shaking intervals between reagent drops. So which is more important, testing accuracy or testing consistency? I'm going to rate this one on two different fronts. First, for those more advanced reefers who choose to run their tanks right on the outer edge of what most would consider to be middle-of-the-road parameters for calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, for example, 380 or 500 calcium, 7 or 12 DKH, or 1250 or 1400 magnesium, then I'd rate testing accuracy to be more important than overall consistency. Although maintaining a tank at these parameters is likely far less common, there is an increase of potential risk to your tank if you start making water chemistry adjustments based on the test results of a kit that consistently over or underreports, especially if you don't have the means to verify the results against a known standard. Conversely to that, and probably relating to a much larger majority of reefers in their tanks, where they aim for more common water parameters like 440 calcium, 9 DKH, or 1300 magnesium, which also allow for a wider margin of error, I'd place testing consistency above testing accuracy, as you can make finer, more precise adjustments to tank parameters, which ultimately leads to an increased level of overall tank stability. Meaning that consistency isn't just how you perform the test each time, but really how each reefer can interpret the end point of the test, where the best test kits available will leave little room for error with the end results that are very clear and definitive. Okay, so with today's data, can we really choose a clear favorite from the group? I can tell you that for me personally, I definitely fall into that large category of reefer who will rely on stability to create an amazing looking tank that can withstand the test of time, which in that case, I'm banking on test kits that provide the most consistent results test after test. For me, that's going to be the Red Sea Calcium Pro, Hanna Alkalinity Checker, and after today's results, I'm switching to the Aquaforest Magnesium Test Kit. One of the only questions that we're left with after today's testing is, what are the long-term costs of using these various test kits, and is there a way to get them cheaper? The only way to find out is to check out this BRStv Investigates video Ryan did, which compares the cost per test versus cost per test reagent refill. You'll be pretty surprised.